Welcome to DAX Machina. Join us as we explore the mysteries of this world. Cryptids, monsters, macabre tales, and horror stories abound. Could they be true? Are monsters real? Good evening, folks, and thank you for joining us on another edition of DAX Machina. Join me in the studio tonight is Robbie Rip Rains. Doc is in Mississippi tonight. He's got a family emergency. I don't know how much I should say on the air, but just folks, keep Doc and his family in your prayers. They're dealing with a loved one who's nearing the end, unfortunately. So keep Doc in your prayers. And Steve's got to work tonight, so Steve won't be with us either. So it's just going to be me and Rip tonight. So hopefully we'll keep manage to keep you all entertained. Doc, I'm sorry, Rip, how the hell are you doing, brother?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
Oh, live and kicking so far, but it's early.
Yeah, that's true. Very true.
Looks like we got a pretty full house already.
Yeah, looks like
we weren't even out of the intro and had 70 people. That is awesome. Folks, thank you guys so much for joining us. It means the world to us. I know there's a lot of other things that folks could be doing. They could be watching TV or watching movies, or there are other shows out there. And we want to thank each and every one of you guys for choosing to spend some time with us. And we hopefully will keep you all entertained and maybe make you even smile once or twice. So that's our goal anyway, is to enjoy having a good conversation with y'all, and hopefully that we'll give you something that's more than just entertaining, that might be a little informative, and hope we always can do that. So again, thank you folks for being part of the DAX Machina Nation. So Robbie, how's your day been, brother?
Not too bad. One day off. I got court tomorrow, so
I don't miss that.
Yeah, I hate those.
Miss that.
I hate those long weeks of work where you got 2 days off and one of them's taken up by court. But one day, 1 week a month that happens. So it is what it is.
Yeah, I remember those days.
Yeah,
I used to go in for briefing and check my mailbox, and you could see that red paper from across the room, like, oh crap, it's a subpoena. Damn it. I mean, my next day off is gonna be in court.
But other than that, it's been pretty good. Pretty good.
That's good, brother. How you feeling?
I'm good. I always kind of allergies start messing me up when it changes from. So my head, not that it's not like it's debilitating or anything. Like it's just the pressure in your head, waking up with a little bit of a sinus headache, and a little bit of being stopped up and things like that. But other than that, I feel great. So just ready to get started on this one tonight. I think we're going to start a pretty good little month here. This shaping up what we've been talking about. It's shaping up to be a good month.
I agree. We kind of hit it a little bit last year on Halloween. We kind of talked about some monsters, but this month, since we're building up to Halloween, and this is our first show in the month of October, we're going to be doing shows about monsters and their real world relations, because surprisingly, some of them are not just Hollywood. And shockingly, I know this is going to be a real surprise to some of y'all, but Hollywood got a lot of shit wrong. So hopefully we can shed some light on some of the rumors and some of the myths, and even maybe bring you guys a few facts you didn't even know. So tonight we're talking about Frankenstein. I remember I read the book. I read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein when I think I was in 9th or 10th grade.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I was a country kid, and I spent more time with my nose in a book than I ever did watching TV. Hell, I was well into high school before we ever got cable in our area. So, everything was on the old antenna. Robbie, I'm sure Robbie remembers the days when you got a set of rabbit ears on the TV with aluminum foil on it to try to get better signal.
Oh, yeah. I was in the days when Dad would send me up on the roof to spin the big antenna to help get the reception better. He'd stand in there, turn it to the left. No, your other left.
Yeah, I remember those days. Not fondly, but I do. And of course, our television had a remote control. It was me.
Yeah, my little brother was the remote control.
Well, I was the youngest, so I got remote control duty.
Yep. My dad would be like, Jason, push 1-4. Jason.
Well, most of those old monster movies are as old as those days when he had the antenna. I think the
Yep.
first time I watched a Frankenstein movie was an old black and white one back in the early
Yep.
70s. Um,
And I think the first one of those that I ever watched was probably Lon Chaney and the Wolfman, which was,
mhm.
had I watched any of the rest of them first, I probably would have been one of their fans instead of the werewolf fan. But just so happens I looked out and watched that one first when Claude Rains uh, played the dad. And
I think when I was a kid, for Halloween, I think I was Frankenstein like 6 or 7 times because he was one of my favorites as a kid. And my nephew Randy, who was 2 years younger than me, was always the Wolfman. So you could pretty much guarantee we had those crappy plastic masks with a rubber band held it to your
mhm,
head. I was almost always Frankenstein, and he was almost always the Wolfman.
yeah, had a few of those myself.
Man, those were like hazardous to wear, and we still wore them everywhere. You could barely see out of the dang things. You couldn't
Yep.
breathe.
And them little staples that held it into the mask would pop loose and catch you in the ear when it was
Mm.
uh
Or dig
the good
into the
old
side of
days.
your head while you're wearing it.
The good old days.
Let's see, they're mentioning a lot of great old horror films in the chat.
Yep. I see
Uh,
Salem's Lot. That was a good
say
one.
that was a great movie. The book was
That
really good, but the
that
movie was
movie,
movie was pretty
I
good.
remember watching that. I was probably 6 or 7 when that movie came out. And I remember watching it on TV. I can remember seeing that scene where he's sitting in the morgue and he's making the cross out of the 2 tongue depressors, and
And
he's
it's
looking
like
down and look.
setting up.
Yeah, and he's trying. That scared the crap out of me because it's like you knew something was going to happen, and he was just so terrified trying to make that cross and kept looking up. Ugh.
That was a creepy movie. The book
Yeah,
was even more creepy. I really enjoyed the book. Um, Another good one from back in that day was the original Amityville Horror.
yeah, that that was a
That scene
scary
where they
movie
look out
too.
the window and those pig's eyes are in the window scared the crap out of me when I was a kid.
Yep, and Poltergeist was a scary movie when we were kids.
Poltergeist and the original Exorcist.
Hmm. I think the scene in Poltergeist scared me more than anything was when that tree reached through there. The clown under the bed, that was scary. But when that tree reached through that window and grabbed him and kind of threw him down his throat or middle of the tree, ugh. Because
Mrs.
we,
Moon says Mystery Science Theater 3000. I loved MST3K when I was in college. We used to have drinking games to MST3K. So I put away a lot of beer to Mystery Science Theater
yeah,
3000.
yeah, that was that was more of our young adult life when MST3K came out.
Yep. Someone mentioned The Omen, another great one. The
Yeah,
Freddy and Jason films. God, there's so many great horror films. We could sit here and talk horror films all night, but we've got one horror subject in particular in mind tonight, and that is Frankenstein.
Frankenstein, as they called him. And I just watched this movie again the other day, and I'd forgotten how funny and how good it was. Transylvania 65000.
I, I was thinking another direction. I was thinking Young Frankenstein putting on the Ritz.
That is a great movie. That Transylvania 65000 is a good movie. Young Frankenstein is a that is a masterclass in comedy.
Oh yeah,
Mel Brooks'
Frau
early stuff.
Blucher.
Bruca.
But it took me a long time until I was in like high school till I found out that Blucher meant glue.
I forgot about that. Because I always, as a kid, wondered what in the world those
But yeah,
horses
what
were
the hell
doing.
did she do to those horses?
Yeah.
Oh, Robert Forrester gave us $5 for the chair fund. Hey man, thank you very much. I
Thanks,
appreciate it.
Robert. But yeah, there's a and there's a sticking on our subject of Frankenstein. There's a lot of good movies on that. Got the Monster Squad, which is a pretty decent
Mhm.
movie with Frankenstein in it. Um, I wasn't too up on the I Frankenstein movie.
It was okay. It
Yeah,
was okay for what it was.
yeah. I don't. I don't so much like it when they take something that's so. If it's just a loose adaptation, that's one thing. But when you take something that's as established as Frankenstein is, and you just go and totally turn it on its ear and change
Yeah.
everything, and it's completely, totally different from what the original author intended. That's just
That's the story with most modern remakes.
true.
They don't remake a movie, they ruin a movie when they reimagine it.
Yeah, but like you said, the movie itself, if you take out all the connection with, because number one, he didn't even look like Frankenstein's monster. He's just
Right.
like a guy that went through a bad car wreck. But and you know, who was it? Was that I'm drawing a blank. Who played
I can't think of
Frankenstein?
his name.
Uh,
He was the guy that was in Battle Los Angeles, and he
yeah,
played Harvey Dent in
yeah,
Batman. And yeah, I can't think of his name. I'm sure
yeah.
somebody will throw his
Somebody will.
name out there.
But anyway, I like him. He's a great actor, but I just don't get him as Frankenstein's monster.
He
You
is a
know,
good actor, though.
like Tom Noonan playing in the Monster Squad, he did a really good job as Frankenstein's monster. And that's another thing. You know, there's a lot of movies that don't make that connection, and they call the monster Frankenstein, which is a really big bone of contention with a lot of people too.
Yeah.
But
Well, it is what it is. Unfortunately, I I wish I could, just like throttle some of these people in Hollywood and going, "What are you thinking? The book is there for a reason. Use it."
this is
Yeah.
what they're thinking.
Yeah. So, did you ever read the book Frankenstein?
Yes, but it was a long time ago, and I think I only read it that once, and I can remember bits and pieces of it. Um, like I remember the part about um, God, what was that? Was there something about his Frankenstein's um wife or maybe his lover or something? It was something to do with that in the book, or am I mixing up one of the movies with that?
I think maybe you're thinking. I don't remember that in the book, but then again,
Uh,
it has been 30 years or
yeah,
35 years since I read that book.
yeah, it's been a long time since I read it too.
KC Calloway says, I love the Frankenstein in Van Helsing. That was a really good Frankenstein.
Yeah,
I
it
would like to have
was.
seen a spin-off about the Frankenstein's monster just from the Van Helsing.
To me, that was more akin to uh the old movies. It had that feel. It just felt like a modern, updated version of what we saw when we were kids.
Hmm.
Instead of
Well,
it just
Van
being,
Helsing was a fun movie.
yeah, it
I
was. It was
really
really,
hoped there would be sequels to that.
and I don't know why there weren't because it was a fairly successful
It was
movie.
pretty successful. It would have been cool if they'd have done a movie about him hunting each of those monsters instead of trying to put literally everything into one movie.
Um, but and as funny as it is, what's his name that played the monster in uh Young Frankenstein? Was that the comedian, the old
Peter Boyle.
yeah, Peter Boyle. He didn't do a bad job.
Oh, he was funny. But that was such a great movie. I've got
Yeah,
a super chat from Cowboys Five Rings. Hey, buddy, thank you, man. Appreciate the trick or treat.
thanks, Cowboy.
Well, the what people, well, even what I didn't realize about Frankenstein. I mean, I grew up, I read the book when I was young, and of course, I've seen all the movies, but I just thought it was all based on that book. And oddly enough, it was a TV show. It was Supernatural of all TV shows, where they brought in the Stein family as the big villain for that season. And I thought, well, I wonder if there's really anything to that. So then I started like digging into it and started finding that there was a lot of real world connections to Frankenstein. That it wasn't just the book and nothing more. Mary Shelley drew on a lot of very real world incidents to create her book. Um, there's a castle called Frankenstein. It's in Darmstadt, Germany, which is in the state of Hesse. It's built on a hilltop in the Odenwald, which means Odin's Woods. There's a lot of conjecture on what Odin's Woods actually means, but me personally, I kind of think it means what it sounds, that it's named after Odin, as in
Yeah.
Valhalla
Thor's
Odin,
dad.
right? Which I think gives it kind of a neat connection. Um, but the name Frankenstein gets its name from the Franks, which were a Germanic tribe, and the word Stein, which means stone or rock. So it made basically the rock of the Franks. It was built around 1250 by Lord Conrad II Reitz of Brauberg, and he founded a free imperial barony, the barony of Frankenstein, in that area. So this place existed hundreds of years before Mary Shelley ever even heard the name Frankenstein. In
Hmm.
fact, he founded an order of lords and knights, the Knights of Frankenstein, based out of that castle, which I think is really kind of cool.
You see what Hooter Transport just wrote? Said he went to that castle.
Oh, really?
He said there's a tomb there.
Frank, it was a crusader. That's badass.
But and you think about it though, now we've learned that there was a real world connection with Frankenstein. We already knew there was a real world connection with Dracula.
Right.
Now there's a real world connection with Frankenstein, and it just kind of strengthens our little thing that we're talking about. All these things are not just made up out of somebody's imagination. Now, obviously, people take liberties. You know this as a writer yourself. You gotta make things entertaining. You gotta ramp up the the action or the gore or whatever. But that real world connection is there, and it's surprising how much or how grounded that connection is. At least it is to me. I don't know if anybody else finds that fascinating, but I find it fascinating that there's so much real world connection with these. Most people look at them and see them in the movies and on the old TV shows, and that's as far as they ever go with it. That's it. That's all they know about Frankenstein's monster or Dracula or anything like that. Wolfman is the old movies or the movies they see nowadays. They don't realize about the books, and then they really don't realize that the books are connected and grounded in reality in some way.
Well, where the story around Frankenstein's castle takes a turn for the weird was in 1673. A guy by the name of Johann Conrad Dippel was born in the castle. And as he grew, he actually was employed at the castle as a professional alchemist, which I know, we all talk, those are the guys that are trying to turn lead into silver. That's just lead into gold. That's just one of the things they were trying to do. Dippel, being a man of science, used extracts from animals to create something he called Dippel's oil, which was supposed to be an elixir of life. It would either be drank or injected. It never really says. But he tried to bargain the elixir of his Dippel's oil to purchase the castle. And of course, they turned him down. He wasn't able to purchase the castle, but he did live there. He was also known to experiment on dead bodies, and was actually accused of reanimating a body by the local clergy, which is pretty terrifying. They claim that he gave this Dippel's oil to an amalgam that he made from a cemetery and brought it to life with a bolt of lightning. What does that sound like?
Sounds an awful lot like the book.
Yeah, it does.
The movie.
And we know for a fact from her own journals that Mary Shelley spent time in a nearby village in 1814, a couple of years before she wrote the book. So there's a real world tie to the story of Castle Frankenstein and where she had got this idea. Of course, there's also a few other real world ties that we'll get to in a minute. But oddly enough, the story from Frankenstein's castle of a guy who brought something back from the dead.
That's pretty weird.
It is pretty freaking weird. But apparently they were concerned enough about it that they thought he actually had done it. Let me look him up real quick. I had some notes made about him.
So did she get that part of the story from what he really did?
I think
Or
that
did
she
she
knew a
write the
lot of
book?
these local tales, and it inspired a lot of what she wrote. I really do. I think she was gathering some of these old world tales because again, this one happened in 1673, and she didn't write that book until the 1800s.
So I would say that probably had a pretty profound effect on the final work, because that's I mean that sounds identical to what you see in the book and the movies, other
Right.
than the fact that it was, you know.
It said that Dippel died at Castle Wittgenstein near Bad Losfi, possibly from a stroke, although some of his contemporaries suspected he was poisoned. A year before his death, he wrote a pamphlet where he claimed to have discovered an elixir that would keep him alive until the age of 135.
Hmm,
Weird
that's
that he would be poisoned right after that came out.
mm-hmm. So she writes the book in, you said, 1800s.
Hmm.
And
I think it
when
was
was
like 1818 or 1820 when she wrote it.
and this guy, he was in the castle in the 1600s.
Hmm. Well
Well,
over 100 years before. Like he was born in 1673, so like 120 years before she ever set foot in that area.
so I wonder what other tales or things that she found from the area that she added to the mix
Well,
for the
it's a
book.
lot of really bizarre stories out of that area of Europe. I mean, we are talking about an area where if you have, especially Eastern Europe, where not only the werewolf but the vampire legend originated as
Yeah.
well. Kay Bauer says DA may be BS, but I read about a military group in Afghanistan that used gas on the bodies after a firefight and the dead got up. That's terrifying.
Well, that for who was it that I guess it was back in the area where Dracula was from, Romania, Transylvania, that all those
Mhm.
areas where the vampire legends started coming in. I know this. I know this is probably stuff we need to hit on for the other show, but there was a lot of that stuff going on where because they didn't prepare the bodies the way we do nowadays.
Right.
So, when gas would escape or things like that would happen, and bodies would twitch and move after they're already dead. That's supposedly that's where a lot of the zombie and vampire and all that kind of stuff started coming from. But then when you have stories like this guy who's supposedly reanimating dead corpses, you start to wonder that line between real and reality, or reality and science fiction, starts getting kind of blurred, and you just wonder what. I would just love to be able to just open up a window just to look back and see what was going on and see their reactions to that stuff, just so you could say, wow, that's why are they reacting that way. But
Someone mentioned, I wonder if Rasputin had taken that elixir. It might explain a lot because Rasputin, when he was finally killed, they fed him poison and he ate it and nothing happened. So then they clubbed him and it didn't die. Then they shot him and he didn't die. So they rolled him up in a carpet and stabbed him and he still hadn't died. So they threw him off the bridge, it wrapped in this carpet into I think it was the Volga River. And when they pulled the body out, he had water in his lungs, which means he was still alive when he hit the water. That guy refused to die.
I heard someone, I don't know how much truth it is, but if you start thinking about, you remember Ghostbusters 2, the main bad guy, Vigo or whatever his
Vigo,
name was.
Vigo the
I heard a lot.
Carpathian.
I heard a lot of his character was based on Rasputin, because think about all the stuff that Dan talks about,
Mhm.
Ray talks about that they did
Mhm.
to him sounds a whole lot. And there again, there's that same connection. So it stands to reason that these old legends or whatever creep their way into our modern works of fiction, so to speak.
It's amazing. You know, you're absolutely right. It's funny how much real world does affect fiction, and
And
sometimes it makes you wonder how much of it is actually fiction.
yeah, well, it's not supposed to. Fiction is supposed to be fiction. It's supposed to be made up. It's supposed to be, well, that's what you expect it to be. You don't expect fiction to have so much of the element of truth in it. But it
Right.
seems like the more layers you peel back, especially on these uh, things that we're talking about now, but vampires and the Frankenstein's monsters, probably way more truth behind it than anybody would have ever thought.
Well, you know, that's something I always try to do with my books. Yeah, I wholeheartedly say my books are works of fiction. I made no pretense otherwise. But you know, I've done so much research into cryptids to try to get the behaviors of the creatures as real as I possibly can. So you know, I put a lot of real world research into every book I write. However, the truism of the cryptid world is all of the books that are put out on cryptids are fiction because this creature isn't proved to exist.
Right.
So anybody that puts out a book on cryptids, because we don't know everything, because all we have is firsthand accounts, some hazy, really bad, grainy video footage, and a bunch of red circle photos. None of this is proven to exist. So whether anybody wants to admit it or not, every book put out on cryptids is fiction.
That's the truth. And but with your stuff though, the realism or the real world that you put into it goes to help you buy into the world that you've created. With what we're talking about here, you don't expect a move or a book about a guy sewing body parts together and animating it with a bolt of lightning. You don't expect any of that to be true.
No, you don't.
I mean, you expect some realism with yours because you talk about military groups that are going after these cryptids. So your realism is based on the eyewitness accounts of how cryptids behave, your knowledge of law enforcement, military tactics, and things like that. That's what you expect. That's just, to me, that is just fine tuning your writing. So you're just not throwing things out there that people are like, that ain't how that really works. Because you know as well as I do, when you watch a movie and it's got law enforcement in it, you do the same thing I do. That ain't how we do that. And as soon as they start doing stuff like that, you've lost your audience. But that's a modern audience that looks at stuff differently than something that was written in the 1800s. They didn't look at stuff like that then. It was just so for that to have that much reality based into it. To me, that just amazes me that there is that much, because it was a fiction. It's like Moby Dick. I mean, that makes you start wondering how much of that was based on somebody actually seeing something like that out there.
Right. Well, the events in Moby Dick are documented. That actually something
Well,
similar to that happened.
but I'm talking about like maybe they've seen whales capsize ships, but a whale that actually goes after a specific ship, knows which ship that captain's on, and targets that ship and leaves other ships on and go. How
Whales are freaking smart.
true.
Then again, look at what killer whales are doing now. They're targeting boats.
I know, that's what I'm saying. So you see that back then, and all of a sudden stuff like this starts happening. That's a scary thought.
Very much so. Hang on a second. I got to look something up. You got to cover for me a second. I'm looking for
Yep.
something.
So the thing with Frankenstein, with the book, with the same thing, and when you look at the older movies, like the older black and white movies, I think those were a little bit more faithful to the source material than the stuff we have now, except for maybe Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula. I think that kind of stayed a little bit more faithful to the
Well,
book
then you've
than
got
some.
the one that had Gary Oldman in it.
Yeah, that's Francis Ford Coppola's
Yeah,
Dracula. That
Bram
one,
Stoker's Dracula.
yeah, I think that one stayed pretty faithful to the book. It's been a while since I've read Dracula too, but it seems to me like, I mean, obviously there were some differences, things like that, but I think it kind of stayed a lot more because the old movie Dracula really didn't go along with the book at all. I don't think.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, they took a lot of liberties. Let's just say
Yeah,
Hollywood always does that, though. It doesn't matter what book they take and make an adaptation out of. They always take liberties. Um, I think about the only, well, I can't really say only within any real conviction, but one of the closest adaptations was the Lord of the Rings, and even those weren't 100% loyal to the source.
yeah, and honestly, it's almost impossible to make a book 100% loyal to the source material because there's things that translate in written word that don't translate or wouldn't translate as well on the big screen. Jaws is a perfect example of that.
Mhm.
You know, if you read the book, there's all those mafia connections and all that kind of stuff, which really makes the way the mayor acted makes you understand that more, especially in the book. But in the movie, you really don't, other than the fact that he just wants the town to stay open to make money, and it makes him look like, he's money hungry. But in the book, there's a reason that he comes off as money hungry. It's because he's trying to take care of all these things that he's got going on. But Spielberg felt that wouldn't translate well. Same thing with there was a love affair between Matt Hooper and Ellen Brody, but he didn't feel like that was something that would translate good. Because he wanted Brody, Hooper, and Quint to have that dynamic amongst the three
Yeah.
of them, and he felt like that would take away from that. And I mean, obviously it would have, but there again, that's a really big paradigm shift from what you got in the book to what you see in the movie. And
Right.
Jaws is arguably one of the best movies ever made.
Jaws was a fantastic film. Spiritual Odyssey wants to know what we thought of the remake I, Frankenstein.
That's the one we were talking about a little bit earlier.
Mm-hmm. That's the one that I've got to look that guy up because it's going to drive me nuts that I can't
He
think of his
played
name.
in the that movie with Tommy Lee Jones about
Aaron Eckhart.
Aaron Eckhart. I knew. Yeah, he played Two-Face in Batman. He played
The Marine Sergeant in
Sergeant in
Battle
Battle
Los
LA.
Angeles.
He played the love interest in that movie with Tommy Lee Jones, and where he was the girl's long lost father. Was it The Forgotten or?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Something
I think it's been a while since I've seen that one.
Yeah, he's been in a lot of movies. He's a great actor, but to me, he just does not. I mean, he's a normal guy. You just wouldn't look at him and think, "Oh, that's Frankenstein's monster." And I really wasn't.
Got a super chat from Toombs. Hey, thanks, buddy. Appreciate it, man.
And I'm not so crazy on the gargoyles and demons being in the middle of it, and they're fighting, and then throwing Frankenstein in the mix, and because that to me that was a whole lot of overload of unneeded. I mean, you could have put any other kind of character in there other than Frankenstein's monster, and it still makes sense. It doesn't have to be Frankenstein's monster for that to work.
Right. I thought I, Frankenstein was a pretty good movie. I mean, for what it was, wasn't really faithful to the original source material, but I still enjoyed the movie because I like Aaron Eckhart. Kay Bauer says, DA, does Pumpkinhead have any real world connections? That would be creepy. Actually,
yes, it does.
It's based on something called the Demon of Vengeance. And there may be a Halloween show on Pumpkinhead. I've got to talk to somebody.
Great freaking movie. The first one, anyway.
Right. Yeah, the sequels, but the first one, was kind of hit the nail on the head about the legend.
Yeah.
Um,
And that
so
was
I,
Stan Winston's first and last directorial debut, and I thought he
that's
did a
too
great
bad.
job.
I thought he did a good job. Uh, More Criminal 7 says, I personally liked I, Frankenstein. I did. I liked it too. It just, like I said, if you went into it not expecting it to be a faithful adaptation of Frankenstein, then it was a pretty damn good movie. But if you went into expecting it to be the book Frankenstein, then you weren't going to be happy. But I did enjoy the movie. I like Aaron Eckhart quite a bit. And Corey Cole says, I loved Young Frankenstein. That one's just classic. I need to get a hold of Ryan Paul Tremblay to see if he wants to come on and do the Pumpkinhead show,
Oh
because
yeah.
Ryan really has dug into the Pumpkinhead legend even more than I have.
Well, last
I
time he
think
was
it'd be a
on,
good one to have him.
we kind of talked about that a little bit last time he was on the show with me and you. Ryan knows a lot about
That
Pumpkinhead's not obscure in the sense that it's not what, because it's got a cult following.
right,
Pumpkinhead is obscure in the fact that it should be more well known and well watched than it is, because it's the first one is a great movie. I mean, that I remember the first time I saw it, and I mean, that scared the living daylights out of me when I saw that movie, because that thing was just terrifying. But I don't know what was scarier, him or what Lance Hendrickson was turning into in the middle towards the end of the movie,
yeah.
because he was freaking terrifying towards the end of that movie.
You go to hell. Yo, you go to hell. I already have, Ed Hardy. I already am. Love that movie.
Yep.
Jesse Christensen said Pumpkinhead, like the Legend of Sleepy Hollow. You don't think you've heard of that one? There's an old movie, and it was made in the late 80s, maybe early 90s, starring Lance Henriksen when he was young. It's called Pumpkinhead. There are sequels, but the first one is the really good one. If you want to watch a good Halloween flick, you can probably find it on Amazon. You might even be able to find it on YouTube for free, but it is worth watching it as a creepy movie.
Yep.
And Eliwa Wolf says, DA, why did your response for Pumpkinhead remind me of the Ghost Rider's Angel of Vengeance? Sort of, but not quite the same thing. It's like this is more like something you could direct. When somebody felt they were wronged, that's kind of something they got in the movie.
Yeah.
Got right. You know, if somebody felt they were wronged, they could go see this certain person and they would sick this thing on them.
But there was a price to pay for it.
There's always a price to pay. Robert Forster says, I want to see Codename Wild Hunt. I would love to see them make movies of those books. That would be freaking awesome. Hey, Mike's in the house. Hey, Mike.
What's up, Mike? But there's a lot of these older movies. When you go back, I mean, like, to me, the scary movies that you see today, it's all about
Jump scares.
Yeah, jump scares and how much go, how many people can you throw in a wood chipper? How many people can you cut in half with a saw? I mean, to me, and I know that that's scary, but to me, that's not
true horror. That's just jump scares and schlock.
Yeah, because think about the first Halloween. There was hardly any blood in the first Halloween, but that was probably one of the most terrifying. And the thing too, there was hardly any blood in that, but those movies were terrifying. But it was all because of atmosphere, setup, where what was going on, music. I mean, John Carpenter talks about that. When he played Halloween for somebody the first time without the score, they were like, eh. And then he put the score to it and showed it to him again. That's the scariest movie I've ever seen in my life.
Mark Napier says, sort of like the Kolchak zombie episode. Yeah, that was another one of those ones where they didn't have a big budget. What was really scary about the old Kolchak episodes was the writing. They did so much with so little. Like my favorite episode of the Kolchak the Night Stalker is the Spanish Moss Murders, the Par Malfait episode, because you very rarely saw that thing other than like glimpses and reflections until almost the end of the episode. And it was absolutely a terrifying episode.
Well, and there again, most of these people have gotten that because of the mistake or not the mistake, the problems that they had in Jaws. It worked out so well with the shark being uh, messed up, and you didn't see the shark for, what, well over half of the movie. You never saw the shark.
At
So
least not all
Spielberg,
of it. You
yeah,
saw
so
bits.
but Spielberg used that to his advantage, and that became a formula for a lot of horror movies around that time.
One of the best things about monster movies is sometimes less is more.
Yeah,
I mean, you
let
want
your
to build up tension and let people's imaginations go
yeah.
crazy before. But don't get me wrong, great special effects are awesome, but great special effects shouldn't be the only thing the movie has going for it.
Well, Dog Soldiers is a great example of a modern day monster movie that uses that good formula. You really don't
Right.
see the werewolves until right towards the end, and they use them so sparingly. And most people don't realize there was only 3 people that they had those suits for. It feels like there's like 7 or 8 different werewolves, but there's only
Yeah.
3. But the way it's shot and the way you see it, it's the same 3 that you see every time, but it looks like so much more just because of the way they've used things in the lighting and the setting and the atmosphere, and it makes it scary as hell.
Yeah. And that's something that, I think that modern movies have really gotten away from. They're so caught up on, explosions and special effects and big budget big budget productions, they forget that sometimes the writing is what really gets you. Um, and I know I'm being nitpicky because I'm a writer, but I think the writing in Hollywood in the last 20, 25, even 30 years has just gotten really lazy.
Oh yeah, of course. And there again, because it's counting on things like we just talked about. How many people can you throw at a wood chipper? How many people can you cut up with a chainsaw? How many
Although Tucker and Dale versus Evil was pretty
Dale
epic.
Dale and Tucker versus Evil. But that movie was tongue in cheek, and that movie was, I like to call that movie a perspective movie, because
It was
depending on which
freaking hilarious.
perspective, yeah, it was, but depending on which perspective you're looking at it from, you look at it from the kid's perspective, they look like 2 insane psychopaths. But you look at it from Tucker and Dale's perspective, they're like, what in the world is wrong with these kids? They're coming up here and killing themselves on my property.
David Neal brought up a good one. This is another great example is the ghost in the darkness. You only see glimpses of the lions at the start, then they come out roaring in the middle of it. That's another great film.
Yep.
They really did a fantastic job of building up the tension in
Yeah.
that movie. Just a really well done movie. Speaking of the lions from Ghost in the Darkness, when those animals were killed, they're actually on display at the I believe it's Museum of Natural
Yep.
History in Chicago. They
That's
said
where they're
people
at.
get chills looking at those things' eyes even today.
Yep. And there's speculation about the true number, but they killed well over 100 people.
But they killed a lot of people.
Yeah, some people say 300, some people say it's more like 150. But even if it is only 150, which I believe it's more than that, but even if it is only 150, that's a lot of people for 2 lions to kill.
That is
And
a lot of people for 2 lions to kill.
and it wasn't like they were actively being hunted by Patterson and that entire tribe. Now I think Michael Douglas's character was his character was based on a real person, but I think that part of him being there, I think, was fictionalized. I think it was Patterson that was mainly the one that was going after him the entire time, but I don't think any of Remington's family was in Africa actually helping him hunt those lions. It's pretty
Yeah, I
cool to
don't think
have
so.
have some.
It was
Yeah.
still a damn good movie though.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's one of my
Yeah,
favorite movies of all time.
whenever you got a movie that's made based on a true story, you might as well say very loosely based on a true story because they're going to take a lot of liberties to make it more exciting to try to really make the movie more riveting because sometimes the real story behind a historical event, while it might be terrifying, it also might be a little slower pacing and take place over a much longer period of time or things like that. But they will add in or take away elements to try to make it a more tantalizing story for the 2 hour window of the movie. So
Yeah.
when I always take it with a grain of salt any time I see one that says based on a true story.
Well, I mean, you could take uh, American Sniper and Lone Survivor and put in and talk about that. You know, Lone Survivor. I mean that the realism in that scene when they were falling down the mountain. You know, I've heard Mark Luttrell tell the actual story. A lot of that is pretty spot on for what they did, but everything else is condensed. You know, it's like it happened like this, and whereas Mark was like, this is more like a, you know, almost like a 3-week process with from the start of that to the finish of it. So, you know, but you would
Well,
lose a
for
whole
the
lot.
time frame of a movie, they had
Yeah,
to condense that down to get the whole story told. Otherwise, it would have been a 4-hour movie.
yeah, because he's like, you know, they hid him in a cave for like almost a week, you know, and he drank dirty water out of a Pepsi bottle and got, I guess, malaria or something like that.
Or
But you know,
dysentery or something.
dysentery. But they left all that out of the movie. I mean, whereas it's kind of hard to put, like you said, put that in a 2-hour movie frame. But you kind of understand things like that sometimes because
Right.
you know, pacing and things like that. That's a big part of movies. You understand that.
You got to keep the audience's interest.
Yeah, because if you lose the audience, then what are you doing anyway?
Exactly. David Neal says, I did get to see the lions when I was visiting family, and it's true. I felt a chill run down my spine looking at them. I've heard people, I haven't been to the museum to see them personally. I've been to Chicago a number of times, but I didn't know they were there until just recently. Um, I would, next time I'm up in that area, I've got a buddy named Ryan that lives up in Chicago. I want to go visit. Oh, I'd like to go to the museum and see those lions. But yeah, I definitely want to see what the if I feel what everybody claims that they do, because those things are supposedly the look in their eyes is just pure evil.
Well, they talk about that people or the people that lived around that area said that, and I think they even used that line in the movie. Said lions never acted this way. This was not how
Right.
lions acted, and I think the name Savo even means place of slaughter or something like that if
Mhm.
you translate it. But they said that they didn't think these lions were. They thought they were spirits of people who were wronged in that area or what for whatever reason. So it's weird. It's wild when you start thinking about it because it's true. No lions ever acted that way before or since.
That we know of.
Well, yeah, that we know of. But I mean, I would think at least from there on, we probably would have heard something about it by now if there had been a similar incident. Maybe beforehand, and it got lost in time. But I would think from there on, if something like that would have happened again, we probably would have heard something. At least it would have been a chance we'd have heard of it. So that's a pretty rare occurrence.
Mike from Abnormal Investigation says, "Do you think something, quote unquote, could have been in the lions?" It's hard to say. I mean, did they act evil? Yeah, they acted very different than is normal for lions. Um, that's a place of Africa is a place of deep magic and deep spiritual roots. So could those things have been something more than just an animal? Yeah, it's entirely possible. But we also know that serial killers exist in humanity. It's not outside the bounds of possibility that other species might have that same trait where something just kills because it can.
Well, I mean, we've said it plenty of times. Animals they have personalities too, just like people do. So why would it not stand to reason that there can be animals who are a holes, just like there are people who are a holes?
Very true. Corey Cole says, "Da, have you ever seen a movie called Brotherhood of the Wolf?" Why
Yep.
does that
Mark
sound familiar?
Dacascos and is about the Beast of Gévaudan.
Oh, yes, I
Lucifer.
have seen that movie. Really good movie.
Yep.
It was a really good movie, and it's a good take on the werewolf legend too.
Yep.
Plus, they brought in gypsy magic and curses. Yeah, that's a freaking great movie.
The only part of that movie that I hated was the fact that Mark Dacascos got killed because he was the best part of the movie. He
He's a
played
good actor.
the Indian that
Hmm.
knew martial arts.
Yep.
But yes,
What,
that was a
what
really good movie.
what do you know about a process called galvanization?
A little bit.
This is some this is something else Mary Shelley would have known about.
I have to use when I do my glass etching on a laser. I use something called cold galvanizing spray, and it's basically, if I understand it correctly, it's a bond. Maybe not 100%. This is an accurate statement, but it's more or less like a bonding agent that it allows. At least the spray that I use, the galvanizing spray, allows uh, the etch to bond to the glass. But I don't think that's exactly what you're talking about.
No. There was a guy in the 18th century, a physicist named Alessandro Volta, who performed a series of really gruesome experiments in England that Mary Shelley would have been well aware of because they were highly publicized and highly talked about. Uh, you guys are familiar with the practice that got a lot of people into trouble for grave robbing back in the late 1700s, early 1800s when they were still studying medical science, how they would pay money for the freshest corpses so they could dissect them. Um, it was pretty common practice, especially in England. Um, Here's the thing. This guy Volta, yes, I think there's a reason his last name has Volt in it. Um, Started experimenting with fresh corpses where he would insert electrodes into the muscles and channel electricity through them. And it was actually believed at one time that he might be able to bring people back from the dead doing that. He's made bodies sit up. He made a move. He made all the muscles contract. He was doing some pretty bizarre experiments, and like I said, at one point they even believed that he was capable of bringing the dead back to life. I think this also had a very heavy influence on Mary Shelley.
Hmm. Miss Naoma says reanimation through electrification is called galvanism.
Mm-hmm. Which comes from the guy that first started doing it, a guy named Luigi Galvani.
But in today's terms, we know that electricity stimulates the muscles and just causes the muscles to move. It's not
Right.
truly
It's
animating, but it's just like you take you've had any kind of science class where you've had to dissect a frog, and the teachers had a dead frog up there and took the electrical wires and made the legs kick. I mean,
Mhm.
you're just
Well,
stimulating the muscles.
Eric says doctors bring people back from the dead often using electricity. Yeah, chest paddles. They've restarted people's hearts. But when galvanism was first a thing, they actually believed that by injecting the right chemicals into the body and channeling electricity into it, that they could basically just restart the body. No matter, of course, or the corpse had to be fresh because if it had started to atrophy, there was no way to restart it. But they actually tried this, and it was fairly well known throughout England in that time. So this is something else that Mary Shelley would have had. So I can kind of see where she took bits of the Frankenstein castle legend, um, the stuff that Dipple was doing with Dipple's oil, and then what Galvani's experiments were, and I can see where the story of Frankenstein could come out of that.
Yeah, started piecing together out of two or three big stories of that time, and
Yeah,
I mean, it makes for really good entertainment. It's entertained us for years.
yeah. Here is almost 2 centuries later from when she wrote the book, and we're still highly entertained by it. But
Hmm.
at the same time, there were members of the clergy who were convinced that Dipple did bring something back from the dead.
I wonder why they were so convinced. There had to be something that.
He was he was known to be doing experiments on fresh bodies. They'd dig them up from the local graveyards and do these experiments with quote unquote Dipple's oil, among other things. And there were, like I said, there were local clergy that basically ran him out of town on a rail because he was experimenting on dead bodies, and they believed he brought something back.
Hmm, well, and I would just about bet that if she did her research kind of like you do your research, I would just about bet that Victor von Frankenstein was pardon the pun, an amalgamation of maybe a lot of these three people that we've just talked about.
Yeah, I think she took a lot of these elements and kind of stitched the story together, much the way Frankenstein did in the book by stitching body parts together.
Yeah.
I think she took enough from real world happenings and then added her own sprinkling of imagination, and gave us a very compelling story with some really bizarre real world connections. Judy Smith says, "Where can we get Robbie's stuff?"
Toombs just put it up on the
Sweet, thanks, Toombs. You're on it, man. Inquisitive says Congress was asked for permission to reanimate George Washington. Huh. I didn't know that one. That was one I'd like to look into more. Casey Calloway says the Germans were doing Frankenstein type experiments on dogs that actually put a dog's head on another dog and it lived for like 2 months. That's kind of terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Was it able to move, or did they just keep it alive?
Seemed to me like that would probably not be able to. They would probably be able to keep it alive, but I don't think it would be able. I mean, I'm just throwing that out there. I just don't think it would be able to function as
Right.
because there would be too much. I mean, to the body itself, that would be a foreign organism, and it would be
Right.
trying to fight it off. So it seems like that would just,
Be a high chance of rejection.
yeah.
Miss Naoma says, my brothers both had their hearts removed from their bodies and operated on separately from their bodies. When the hearts were put back, they restarted them with defibrillation, which, in modern times isn't that big of a stretch in the imagination, but in Mary Shelley's times, it was unheard of. Much like some of these other authors we talked about who came up with ideas that were way ahead of their time.
Well, I mean, we've talked about Jules Verne several times about where he got the idea for half the stuff he wrote about, because he would not have ever seen anything like that. We figure out here that Mary Shelley at least had some basis where she got this information. But I still, where in the world did he ever get the idea for the Nautilus?
Yeah, or the time machine.
Yeah, those two things right there just blow me away every time we think or talk about it, of how he was able to just, because he's basically describing a nuclear submarine. What we see nowadays. I mean, the Nautilus would be it would be fairly comparable to what we have. I mean, obviously, probably electronics and stuff like that wouldn't be, but as far as propulsion and things like that, it would be fairly comparable to what we have now.
Jesse Christensen said it couldn't move. The video is available online. I'll have to check that out later. I didn't figure that they would be able to amputate it and the dog just get up like it was no big deal.
Yeah.
Of course, all the muscles that have to be reattached, they'd have to attach literally every nerve ending.
Yeah, and that's millions of nerve connections.
They may have been able to reattach, like rudimentarily attach the spinal cord, and maybe like the main arteries going to and from the brain and the heart. But in 1940s, I doubt seriously they had the neurosurgical capability to reattach stuff like that. I mean, it's only been in the last 30, 40 years that they've actually been able to successfully reattach limbs.
Yeah. And Howley Wolf, yeah, maybe they did, but that still doesn't explain where he got the idea to write about that. I mean, that just is unfathomable.
Yeah, it's really bizarre how some of these writers came up with some of these ideas. You've got the time machine, you've got the Nautilus. I mean, there some of these ideas that these authors created came out. Well, and of course, um, Arthur Conan Doyle had The Lost World
Mm-hmm.
about finding dinosaurs long before Jurassic Park was ever a thing.
Yep.
How did these guys think of these things? Um, it just there wasn't a whole lot to draw on to organize on this. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, it's not like,
sub there was no submarines really worth speaking of back then, and for him to think that this thing come up with a submarine that was like able to go to extreme depth, travel at speed, and was pretty much self-contained. Yeah, it's essentially describing a nuclear sub.
yeah. I mean, like when you go to do your research, you get online, you start digging stuff up, you read all this stuff. They didn't have that back then. So where do they get the research for this stuff?
Mark Napier says the first submarine was built in 1578. Yeah, but even in the Civil War, when they made the Hunley, the Hunley was an engineering masterpiece of its day, but it had six or eight guys inside, basically pushing bicycle cranks, to turn the propeller shaft on this thing, and it still sank on its maiden voyage. It did what it set out to do, but it went to the bottom of the freaking ocean.
Yeah.
The Hunley was only recently discovered, I think, in the last 20 years or so.
Yeah, about 15 years ago, I think, because my dad actually went down there when they raised it.
That would have been interesting to have been there when that happened. But yeah, submarine wasn't the idea of a submarine wasn't a new concept. But like I said, even as recent as the Civil War, it was still so laughably simplistic compared to what the Nautilus was. Kay Bauer says, wonder if that sub was controlled by an Xbox controller. No, that's a pretty good indication you don't want to ride on that sub.
Yeah.
Jesse Christensen says, in the case of Jules Verne, could it be science mimicking fiction, like the designer of the original flip phone mimicked Star Trek? He wanted to be like the communication device. It's entirely possible.
Yeah, but like we said before with Hollywood, that still doesn't answer the main
how
question.
did he get the idea?
Yeah,
yeah.
That's the main. It's not. We're not wondering where modern sub design came from. We're wondering where he got what is a modern sub back then.
Right.
That's what is mind blowing about this.
Northwoods, you have a good night, man. Be safe. Thanks for hanging out.
Northwoods.
Spiritual Odyssey said the dog head lasted a few days. The dog host died days later. That's rough. I remember reading somewhere, I think it was a Russian scientist was going to attempt to graft one human head onto another body. And I don't remember ever reading if they actually tried it.
So getting back to the Frankenstein topic though. This kind of, I don't know how closely cloning that we're talking about nowadays would fall into that sort of. I mean, I know it's not the exact same thing, but that's kind of the hot button issue now of cloning and things like that. So, but if you take out reanimation and put cloning in as the main focus, really not a whole lot of difference in the story. Because you could.
Here's a question for you. This one, I'm sure will spark some interesting conversation in the chat. Did he technically bring Frankenstein back to life, or did he create a zombie? What do you think Frankenstein was?
Personally, if you look at all I don't remember how the book described him because, like I said, it's been so long ago. But if you look at all the movie depictions of him, he's like a big zombie. And you think about the books from Larry Carrera that you and I have talked about many times. Agent Franks, that's Frankenstein's monster. Did you get that far into it yet? Okay. And it kind of goes into a whole big spiel. I mean, one of the spinoff books is completely about him and his origins, and it kind of goes back into a lot of that. I think he pretty much was a zombie.
Yeah, because in the book he pretty much just had rudimentary intelligence. He wasn't they didn't bring back this genius. They
Yeah,
brought back basically a monster.
yeah.
Roxanne Delgado says Abby normal. You brought me an
Abby,
abnormal brain.
Abby Normal. Marty Feldman was awesome in that movie.
Great movie.
Uh,
Jesse Christensen says zombie like a self-driving car, animated but empty. Corey Cole says the brain came from an insane asylum, which again, not really shocking. Striker 479 says zombies run on the basic needs of food and spreading an infection. If gone that route, I think the argument can be made that well, that he created some sort of zombie or a golem, a flesh golem.
and I think that's where Carrera was going in his book. It was more of a golem, because it's been a while since I read that one, but I think the intelligence that Agent Franks had was given after his body was taken over by whatever spirit took over the flesh golem that was created and given life. So I think there's an argument for that it's something like either a zombie or a flesh golem. I don't think it would, because if he created a person, then why was Frankenstein's monster never depicted as anything other than something that walked around going, oh,
right?
Really
Fire
never had any,
bad.
Yeah, never really had any meaningful conversation with anybody except in Young Frankenstein after him and Gene Wilder did the little experiments. But other than that one, there's not really a whole lot of meaningful conversation by Frankenstein's monster.
Right. Except in
I Frankenstein, yeah.
I Frankenstein and in Van Helsing.
Yeah, that's true. I forgot about that one.
Frankenstein was very intelligent in Van Helsing.
But I think they went with a different route because in Van Helsing, obviously the monster was made for a specific purpose. It was made to give life to Dracula's babies.
Right.
So that kind of takes a little bit away from, because it was all the monsters combined
the
in one
anti-life
thing.
equation.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that kind of gets almost into DC universe type stuff, because that was, the big thing that Darkseid was going after.
Right.
So, I don't know how. My point with that is I don't know how faithful that part of Van Helsing was to the original Frankenstein.
Well, Van Helsing borrowed heavily from several different source material.
Yeah, because I mean, you got
the inclusion of Jekyll and Hyde in that was not part of the original, Frankenstein or Dracula legend. But I did like how they brought that in, and I really think that would have been a great franchise of him hunting different monsters down through the centuries.
Think about this though. When they tried to start the Dark Universe, they just did it with the wrong movie first. They did The Mummy with Tom Cruise. Russell Crowe's character was Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Yeah.
But
that, unfortunately, that whole thing just flopped and fell apart.
Yeah, it did. And I hate that it did. And there was a lot of Easter eggs in that movie from the original Brendan Fraser movie. The book, the Book of the Dead and the Book of the Life were both in that movie.
Well, those weren't just from the Brendan Fraser movies.
Yeah, those
were taken from Egyptian mythology.
Yeah, and they were actually in the original Mummy with who played the Mummy in the original one?
Delois is heading to bed, not feeling well. Delois, thank you for being here. Hope you get feeling better.
But so all those characters, I mean, really the only thing I think there were some silver bullets in that, but they didn't really mention any kind of werewolf stuff, or there was some type of silver. But there was a vampire skull.
Mm-hmm.
I don't trying to remember. I don't remember seeing anything to do with Frankenstein in that, or Frankenstein's monster in that little, when they were walking around in the little monster museum torture thing.
Right.
But I really wish they had done better and got off the ground, and they were able to bring those in, because I think that would have been a good universe.
Yeah, they were trying to create a much larger monster verse, and it just didn't work, which is unfortunate. Because I think if it had been done right, it could have been really good. Uh, the Tom Cruise mummy, it was okay. Uh, wasn't
But
fantastic.
it didn't do as good as the Brendan Fraser
Right.
movies. Honestly, if you look at its numbers, it didn't do as good as the last one that Brendan Fraser did with Jet Li,
Mm-hmm.
the Tomb of
Which
the, or
I thought Tomb of the Dragon Emperor.
yeah,
I thought that was the weakest of the three
yeah,
movies.
and
They
this,
replaced Evie. Yeah, it just had some issues.
yeah,
But the first two mummies were really good.
yeah,
The
but
third
then
one was good too, but for different reasons.
but it did better than Tom Cruise's reboot. And I think that, they change, not every time, but anytime you go in, you make core changes that really just turn the whole universe on its ear. The mummy was never a female, and there's nothing wrong with but the mummy was never a female.
Yeah,
The whole premise of that was it was an evil priest who was trying to, you know,
basically plunged the world into darkness out of
yeah.
revenge.
But here you got, she's jealous because she has a baby brother born, and she's not going to get to be in charge now. So she kills everybody because she's jealous. That kind of takes the whole premise that has been set for, 50 plus years. I don't understand why people. There you go again with the Hollywood writers and thinking they know best and thinking they know what we need
Yeah.
to see.
Well, and even putting that aside of them swapping characters around, uh, it's that's not even the problem. It's bad writing.
Yeah.
When they just ignore everything that went before and decide to do their own thing, they lose a lot of the fans because the fans expect to see something that's a continuance of the story they already love. They don't
Mm-hmm.
want to see you come in and just basically go, "No, all that came before sucked. We're doing our own thing."
Well, it's like the Halloween timeline. That is so freaking convoluted. And there's so many retcons and things like that. People really, it's hard to keep up with.
Right.
With, and now I heard they're going to get another reboot with Blumhouse or Blumhouse, however
Yeah.
that's pronounced. They're going to come in and redo it again.
I guess we'll see how it works. Well, look, they tried to redo Nightmare on Elm Street
Mm-hmm.
with the guy that played Rorschach and
Yep,
Watchmen.
Jackie Earl Haley.
Yeah, and it just didn't go over very well.
No,
Not that guy's a
same,
bad actor; he's just not Robert England.
well, same thing with the remake
And
of
but Robert
Friday.
ain't getting no younger. But
No,
it's
but same thing with the remake of Friday the 13th. Derek Mears is a great actor. Derek Mears is a very convincing looking Jason. But they went back, and instead of, and this is the same problem that they had with the Halloween, you take that mysterious character and you take that excuse me, I didn't mean the Rob Zombie version of Halloween. Rob Zombie wanted to give a reason for why Michael Myers was the way he was, because he had a effed up childhood and blah blah blah, and it took the mystique away from Michael Myers. Same thing with the remake for Friday the 13th. How Jason would walk and beat you to wherever you were going was a mystery. Can he teleport? Can he fly? What is it? But they go back and they say, okay, he's got all these underground tunnels and he's got these bells linked up everywhere, and he can run underneath the tunnels to where he knows you're going to be, and then he pops up. That takes all the mystery away from these things. So when you go back and you take something that's like you just said, that people have grown up with, like you and I grew up with the Nightmare on Elm Street and the Friday the 13th and the Halloweens, and you take that mystery away and you say, well, Michael Myers is the way he is because his mom was a stripper and his mom's live-in boyfriend was a piece of crap that beat his mom and smacked his sister on the butt, and he snapped because of a bad upbringing. Well, that just makes him just a normal person like anybody else that becomes.
That's more of an origin for Rorschach than it is for Michael
Yeah.
Myers.
Yeah. So, but when you take that mystery away from that, it ceases to be the unstoppable force. Or
Right. Some mysteries should never be solved when it comes to horror
exactly,
films. Kind of like with
exactly.
Frankenstein. Yeah, when you're looking at the Frankenstein story, like in I Frankenstein, they tried to fill in gaps that didn't really need to be filled in. And that was one of the few things about that movie I didn't like. You were talking about gargoyles and demons and everything that was in there. None of that needed brought in to tell a good Frankenstein story.
No.
So really, I Frankenstein, the only thing about the true Frankenstein story that they used was the character. Uh, much like Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, it was not the original Frankenstein story. It was told for its own purposes, and that's why I said if you accept I Frankenstein for what it is instead of expecting it to be a faithful adaptation, it's a pretty good movie. And that's the way with a lot of quote unquote remakes. If you go into it expecting it to be the original, you're gonna be disappointed. And that's the unfortunate truth of it. Keith Von Rensselaer says the first Jeepers Creepers was pretty good. It was. It got a little cheesy after that, but I liked the premise of the first Jeepers Creepers.
Yeah.
But I want to know how that guy got a vehicle registered, let alone got a personal tag.
I guess he went the same route that Michael Myers did. How the heck he drove in the very first?
Did it all through the mail, I guess.
Yeah. But and Mark Napier brought it that the original Jason and Michael were demonic. Well, Jason was not demonic until part 6, I believe. Whichever one where Tommy went back and they dug him up and he started stabbing him with a fence post. Because Jason was actually dead at that point. He was a normal person up until that point. Because he wasn't the killer in part 4. It was a copycat. It's part 5. I'm sorry. It's when he became. That's when Zombie Jason started, and that's when he was fully demonic, and he was just unstoppable and all that. But he was actually dead. They killed him in 3. He wasn't in 4. He came back in 5. And Michael Myers, I think he was not demonic until probably the end of part 2 when he supposedly died in the fire that almost killed Dr. Loomis.
Right.
Because I think 4 is when they started talking about the cult of Thorn and all that stuff, and that's when it kind of went off the rails with all that weird stuff, and said he was part of this druid culture or whatever, and he was a demon. So yes, I have way too much time on my hands to watch every one of those movies, but I've seen every single one of them probably 15 times or more.
Sorry, I was checking something. Spiritual Odyssey says another classic movie I really enjoy is The Creature from the Black Lagoon. That one was pretty good too.
Yes, the first one. The second one was but the first one was the second one was one where they had him in the at SeaWorld, Marine Land, whatever the heck it was, where they had him there. To me, that one's just kind of, pardon the pun, fish out of water. But when he was actually in the jungle and they were on his turf and his territory, that was a pretty good movie for that time frame. I mean, they were stuck on a boat. They couldn't go anywhere. That one little island right there next to them that they could get off and get up, but the creature could get on that island too. It's the classic. As the good guy, you don't have anywhere to go. You're trapped, and you have to deal with what you have to deal with, and just a great formula for a great movie. And the music for that one was good
How
too.
about The Town That Dreaded Sundown?
Good movie.
That was a good movie. Or
that's the one where they had the wooden bullets, right?
Yeah, I think that was. But what was the one about the town in Alaska that once it got dark, it stayed dark?
30 Days of Night.
30 Days of Night.
Josh Hartnett was in that movie. That's a good movie too. Josh Hartnett.
Mm-hmm.
He played the sheriff in that movie.
Here's one that'll make Robbie cringe, although it wasn't really a monster movie. Bone Tomahawk.
Hate that freaking movie.
I liked the movie, but that one scene is hard to watch.
Whew.
I think
That
the
oh
original
that
Bone Tomahawk script, I think those were intended to be a Bigfoot type creature. But they decided to go a different route with the Mayan death whistles and stuff. Um, but I kind of get why they did, but I think it would have been a much cooler movie if those had been Bigfoot.
yeah. At least there then that scene would have still been hard to watch, but knowing that it was people that were quartering him up to eat, that just ugh.
Spiritual Odyssey says, "How about it?"
Which one?
Yeah, the
New one
original or the
or
new
the
one?
original? Because Tim Curry plays Pennywise amazingly, but not that Skellen Skarsgård didn't do a great
Oh
job.
yeah, he did a good job too.
It's just two different
Two very
variations.
different takes.
Yeah,
We all float down here.
because Tim Curry's version is creepy and will make you go, "Ugh." But Stellan Skarsgård's was like terrifying. The way, like the scene where when they go
You're
down and
wrong about the town that dreaded sundown. That was about the Phantom Killer in Texarkana. Thanks, Mark. We're thinking
oh,
of a different movie.
Sundown the Vampires Killer or Sundown of the Vampires is the one where they use the wooden bullets. That's the one you and I
Yeah.
are talking about.
Spiritual Odyssey says, what I liked about I, Frankenstein was that at the end he got to go free. Let you think he might have found a life or peace somewhere. That was pretty good.
Yeah. Well, he got to go free at the end of Van Helsing too.
True. Toombs says, want a balloon, Georgie?
Yeah. Now that scene, TV version versus movie version, where he reaches out and actually bites Georgie's arm off in the movie. Yeah, that was.
That's pretty terrifying.
Yeah.
And that bit he does with his eyes, Skarsgård can really do that. And it freaks people out.
But you know what was creepier than, well, besides this, when they're in there in the garage watching him, and he's with the in the old movie projector or whatever, but when they're down in the cave and they start learning more about him, Pennywise the dancing clown, and he's up there and he starts doing that little dance he's doing. That's freaking creepy. I'm sorry, that just, I'd be like, all right, I'm out.
I like both of the versions of it for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
The Pennywise with the Tim Curry version, I think that one was more psychological horror.
Yeah.
But the modern remake was more just pure horror. There was just so much terrifying about that. And Skarsgård did a fantastic job.
If you really look at the book and what Pennywise actually was, what Skarsgård's Pennywise was more in line with what that entity would be doing, I think. But Tim Curry's, I think, was more like you said, that mental, want to play that game with you and actually tease that fear out of you. Whereas Skarsgård,
more of a psychological.
It's all at once, and it's, you know what I'm saying? There's no build up to it. Tim Curry's was more of a build up.
Right. Mrs. Moon says the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I don't think anybody really wants to see me do the time warp. Yeah. And it has been a minute since I've danced the time warp.
Yeah, that was an interesting movie.
Man, there was a time I could sing that entire soundtrack.
Yeah. I was one of my managers at one of the places that I bounced at they would play that song, and he would stand up there upstairs and do that dance every single time. I'm like,
if you my wife and I were dating, when there was a place here in town we called McSalty's. It's a pizza place, and they had on Friday and Saturday nights they had a live band. We knew all three of the guys in the band. The band was called Nick Rule and Ned the Band. They, it was just a keyboard, a guitar, and a stand-up bass. And we would go listen to them play live, and they would play the time warp, and half the time everybody in the room was up dancing the freaking time warp, and it was. But plus there was the movie too. But that yeah, that's one of the when I think of time warp, I think of McSalty's Pizza.
Kay Bowers asked if we remembered the movie Razorback. Yes, we've talked about that
Oh, that
movie
was a
on the
great
show.
film.
The Australian Jaws.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a good movie.
Roxanne says I have the movie and the soundtrack. I used to have the soundtrack on CD somewhere, and I don't know what I did with it. Um, but there was a time I could put that CD on and sing every freaking song all the way through, knowing every lyric. And I probably still could if I heard the songs a time or two again.
Uh, Larry Meister says From Dusk Till Dawn. That was another good movie.
That
The
was a
first
good
one.
movie. The first one, definitely the first one.
The second one, just for the fact that Robert Patrick does the accent and the voice the way he does, it's worth watching just to hear him. You on them patches? Just to hear him do that redneck South Texas accent. It's worth watching just for that. But the movie itself sucks. But just to watch Robert Patrick do that whole movie in that South Texas trash accent is hilarious.
Roxanne Delgado says, "I know. Yes, I knew every song also, and yes, you'd remember the words. I'm sure they would come flooding back to me. Uh, yeah, it was a pretty good soundtrack. There was another soundtrack that I used to be able to sing along with pretty much every song was the movie Heavy Metal.
That there again, the first heavy metal.
Yeah, the first one. Second one, you know, and as a teenager, of course, I liked the animation. Hint, hint. But the music was just fantastic. I mean, they had Blue Oyster Cult on there, and Sammy Hagar, and Devo. I mean, they had some freaking awesome music on the heavy metal soundtrack. That's something I still listen to on occasion.
And somebody was just saying that the Lost Boys was supposed to be a Goonies sequel. No, it was the Lost Boys was supposed to be what the Goonies originally was supposed to be, which was a darker. But Richard Donner decided to make it more of a comedy. So when they did the Lost Boys, that's where the premise for the Lost Boys comes. What the Goonies was actually supposed to be was a more darker, adult type kids adventure type. I mean, I know it don't make sense, but they actually do a really good documentary on that on one of the Lost Boys things where they talk about how the Goonies was supposed to be more like what the Lost Boys ended up being.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you might could technically call that but they were not Goonies 1 and 2. They were just Lost Boys was just what the original Goonies was first intended to be until Richard Donner changed it and just made it more lighthearted and lighter tone of the movie.
That one guy says the band Live was in the Lost Boys. I did not know that. I like the band Live. I like them a lot. In fact, their album, uh, the first one, Mental Jewelry, still one of my favorite albums. That song, The Beauty of Grey, is just a really great song.
Yeah, that guy that played the saxophone in that movie, he's still as big now as he was back then.
That dude was wicked jacked.
Yeah, I saw him in one of the documentaries that I watched on the Lost Boys. They interviewed him, and he's still just. I think he probably wiped the oil off by now, but he's still jacked.
I would hope he cleaned up. It looked like he was covered in 40 weight. Eric says, "What about Maximum Overdrive? That was a good movie."
Yeah, I think Stephen King probably snorted all the coke. Not all the coke in X number or place A, all the coke on that movie, because that movie, good movie, but good gosh, that thing was out there.
Papa Bear says Mental Jewelry is an undiscovered hit for most people. Love that album and Throwing Copper. Yeah, Throwing Copper was a good album too, but I think Mental Jewelry is probably their best album. Inquisitive says Salem's Lot. We already talked about Salem's Lot, didn't we?
Yeah, towards the first of the show. Still a good movie though.
Still a great flick. The book is better than the movie, but the movie's pretty damn good.
Yeah, Corey Cole, that was a pretty good scene. Corey Haim singing in the bathtub.
Roxanne Delgado says Stephen King is scary looking anyway. Yeah, and his son Joe Hill looks just freaking like him.
Yep. A little bit of Stephen King trivia. The only Stephen King movie that I can think of right off the top of my head, I'm sure there's at least one or two more, but the one I think of right off the top of my head that kind of goes into what we're talking about that I didn't see him have a cameo in was Silver Bullet.
I don't remember seeing him in Christine either.
I think. I don't know if he was. I can't remember if he was in Christine or not.
It's been a minute since I've seen Christine. It was a good movie.
I have to go back and watch Christine. That was a good movie too. I loved Christine. That's one of my.
Made me want a 1958 Plymouth Fury.
Made me want a bulldozer.
Wouldn't do you any good. Christine would get you eventually.
Just leave the bulldozer parked on top of it.
There you go. Tough to reform when you got 10 tons of heavy equipment parked on top of you.
That's right.
That one guy says 28 Days is one solid zombie flick, and its sequel 28 Weeks was solid and actually freaked me out. The zombies were not slow. Yeah, fast zombies are terrifying. But if you want to watch a good zombie flick, which is technically not really a zombie flick, it's the movie The Crazies with Timothy Olyphant. When the people just go crazy because of the pollutant from that chemical.
Mm-hmm.
They're not technically zombies, but it's a damn good movie.
I've heard, and I've really never. And I think this is The Happening another Stephen King movie, or is that or just out of M. Night Shyamalan's head?
I don't think that's a Stephen King flick.
I mean, some people I've heard say that that's possibly kind of sort of like a zombie flick because people are doing this crazy stuff that makes no sense. I've never really watched that one. It was one of those that when the guy or the kid laid down under the lawnmower, I was just like, yeah, I don't know if I want to watch this. That was
Spiritual Odyssey says, what do you guys think of the Alien series? I think the first one was the best one. I really do.
I actually just watched that one again the other day when I was in Alabama. It was on. And that's the first time I'd seen it in maybe a couple years. And I'd forgotten how good it was. That was a really good movie. And I like
super chat from KC Calloway. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Casey.
You're awesome. Thank you very much.
I like the second one, Aliens.
Yeah, the second one is great. Don't get me wrong, but the first one, just for the fact that you didn't know what that thing was, that it was still brand new. And when that thing burst out of that dude's chest, you were like, "Oh my god!" Just the absolute shock value. I think just pound for pound, the one that scared me the most was the first one.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I mean, that was, and it's funny to think how many people that were in that movie have gone on to careers in other great movies. And that movie in itself, how good, because you think about movies that launch people's career, they're not that great of movies, but they were there. Mm-hmm. That was a great movie, and it launched a lot of great careers. Sigourney Weaver, Lance Henriksen, Bill, was that Paxton or Pullman? Which Bill was it? Paxton?
Bill Paxton.
Bill Paxton.
Game over, man. Game over.
Game over. Michael Biehn. I mean, there's a lot of good careers.
Michael Biehn's a great actor.
Yes, he's one of my favorite. And I had forgotten that I saw it because Aliens was 1982 when it came out. Mm-hmm. So I saw it when I was a kid, but I had forgotten that I'd seen it. So the first movie I remember seeing Michael Biehn in was Navy SEALs.
Mm-hmm.
But
good movie.
Great movie.
He also played a Navy SEAL in the movie The Abyss.
Yep.
Great flick.
Yeah, he was a Navy SEAL in The Rock too.
Yeah, he was.
So he's been a Navy SEAL.
A Navy SEAL at least 3 times.
Yep.
What do you think of the Predator franchise?
I love the Predator franchise. And yep, I love Predator, Predator 2, and Prey. Now, I don't technically have a problem with the one where they're on the I can't remember which one, but the one where they're on the hunting colony off up in space on a different planet. I don't have
I
a
think that's
problem with that one.
Predators.
Yeah, I the way they start playing it, but the Alien vs Predator Requiem, Alien vs Predator,
Yeah, those were
and the one where they tried to make it a dark comedy with Thomas Jane and that to me that was one of the stupidest ones out there. But I like the original, I like the second one, and I love Prey. Those are my top three. Maybe not necessarily in that order, but I like those three. And I ain't got a problem with the one where they were on the island or the other planet. And at first I didn't like that movie because I can't see Adrian Brody as a tough guy because I just watched him in King Kong, Peter Jackson's King Kong. And he just looks like this little wimp. And he was it the Machinist? Was that what he was in? Or
I think so.
Anyway, I just had a problem seeing him as a tough guy. But after I watched it once or twice, I was like, okay.
I really enjoyed Predators. Where they're on the one that, if that's the one it's called, because I'm drawing a blank. But
Yeah,
the
I
one
think
where
you're right.
there are all these people who are on the alien planet, and the Predator there. Really liked that one.
Yeah, and there again, there's a lot of good actors in that one too.
Especially the fight between the Predator and the Yakuza guy with the samurai swords. That was freaking epic. I loved that scene.
Yep, and that was
the Predator's like taking off its freaking high-tech weapons. Like, you want to go old school with blades? We'll go old school with blades. That showdown in that field was just so freaking cool.
Yep, but you got Walter Coggins in that movie. You got Mahershala Ali. You got Adrian Brody. You got Lawrence Fishburne. You got Topher Grace or Topher, how you pronounce his name.
Topher, I think it is.
Who else was in that movie? Danny Trejo. I mean, there's some big freaking names in that movie.
There was some pretty good names in that movie, and it was pretty well done.
Yeah.
I really wanted to know what happened to him after the end of that movie because two of them were still alive.
The YouTube has got because there was actually a comic that came out after that.
So I wouldn't mind finding the comics.
If you look on YouTube and put in what happened to Royce and Isabella, there's actually a really good documentary on YouTube.
I might have to watch that.
Actually goes and explains what happened. And
Corey Cole says, I think Sonny Landham should have had a better fight scene in the first Predator. Yeah, when Billy basically takes off his armor and draws that knife and stands, that should have been a good Sonny Landham should have got a good death scene, not just a dying scream in the background. Well, that should have been what the Japanese sword fight was.
I've heard that's why they put that scene in that movie, was because so many people were pissed off about Sonny Landham's
just dying off camera.
Yeah. So I heard that's why they put that in there specifically, was to kind of pay homage to Sonny Landham.
The first Predator had some of the best one-liners in it. Like Jesse the Body Ventura, I ain't got time to bleed.
He dug in like an Alabama tick.
Doing this stuff will turn you into a actual Tyrannosaurus.
Strap this on your sore ass, Blaine. Love that movie.
That movie had some classic lines in it, but just a really good movie.
That's a horror movie disguised as an action movie.
That one guy says the only movie I ever felt so uncomfortable with was I Spit on Your Grave. Only lasted about 15 minutes. I think I turned that movie off too.
Yeah,
that one was
dark.
That one was it put me in a really dark place that I didn't want to be.
Yeah, that movie was very dark.
What did you think of Prey?
I liked it. And I've heard both schools of thought, but honestly, compared to some of the BS Predator movies we got after the first two,
yeah,
it's solidly in the top three of best Predator movies. I think
reason why I liked Prey is, and a lot of people were pissy because it was basically the quote unquote 90-pound girl beat this thing. She beat it by outsmarting it. She didn't outmuscle it. She played to her strengths with that thing.
Yep.
And I thought it was very well done.
And I thought they did a very good. It wasn't. It didn't come out of nowhere. Through the whole movie, it showed that that's how she got where she was at, was using her brain and not using anything else. You know, so it was a very good payoff, because it was nothing was like, it wasn't like she was beating things with her muscles throughout the movie and just out overpowering stuff, and then all of a sudden she come up with this. That's how she got through everything she got through in the movie, was
She
using her
figured it
head.
out.
Yeah, and figuring it out, and that's what they were building up to. So it was a good payoff, you know.
I agree. I really enjoyed the movie.
Showing her falling into that pit at the very first and figuring out how to get out of it and knowing where it was at and thinking, okay. And she knew where she was at towards the end, and setting up how she set it up. It just, to me, it just.
And then tricked it into using its own weapon against itself.
Yeah.
That was pretty damn smart.
And I've heard people, well, how that thing's so stupid, it's not going to realize that happened. You know, who's to know what it.
Not only that, without the mask on, it has trouble seeing.
Yeah.
Casey Calloway says Sonny would be a good gray eagle. It's funny you should say that, because Sonny Landham is who I had in mind when I created the character of William Gray Eagle. That is literally the guy.
Sonny Landham was a badass.
He was a badass. Corey Cole says she was supposed to have been Billy's great grandmother. Well, now I like her even more. I didn't know she was supposed to be Sonny Landham's great grandmother, but I really like that.
I think it would have been a little bit more than great grandmother.
Yeah, probably would have been great, or 3 or 4 greats, because there's about almost 200 years between the two.
Yeah, because they were French trappers using black powder pistols.
So that would have been 1700s in the time frame.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I think it says 1700s in the first part of the movie. There was not too much modern in there. So in Predator would be that was supposed to be in the mid to late 80s when it happened. So she would have had to
Totem Whispers. What did you guys think of Predator 2 with Danny Glover?
That's a great movie, I think.
I like that one, but for different reasons than I liked the first one. They were both great movies, but I liked them for totally different reasons. Because the first one was just a great high-octane freaking romp. It was an Arnold Schwarzenegger action film right out the gate. But Danny Glover is not Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he didn't try to be. And that was the best part. He didn't show up and there's like, I'm the baddest thing around here. I'm going to kill everything. He didn't try to be Arnold. He came in and he was Danny Glover, and it was a more thinking man's Predator.
He played
it very smart.
He was Mike Harrington. I think that's a lot of the Predators are going after who they're going after for reasons. They're not going. The Predator in the jungle Predator did not single Dutch out because, Dutch is just the biggest guy. Granted, he
came after that team because that team was supposed to be the best of the best.
But if you go back and look at the comics that have gone in depth, that he had that Predator, what they call the jungle Predator, he took that team out in the order so that Dutch would be the last one, because he had been watching them ever since they got in there, and Dutch was his main goal. He had a, because see, that's what the Yautja hierarchy, the way they do stuff, everything has a purpose, and to be blooded, you have to do things a certain way, or you're an outcast, and that's so. He had a specific order that he was taking them out in, and that's how he did it. And I've heard a lot of people say that that's the only reason he took out Miller's team, was to get Dutch's team in there.
It wanted the best.
Yep. But there again, going back to Predator 2, same thing with Mike Harrington, Danny Glover's character. He wasn't the biggest, but he sure as heck was one of the baddest that was in that time frame of that. And that, they're always attracted to the heat and the battle, and that's what was going on in LA, the heat wave and big time turf wars of all these drug wars and the police and all that stuff. So it was drawn to that. So it'd been the city predator, I think what they said they called it. It'd been sitting there watching for weeks
God
or
knows how
months.
long.
Yeah. So it had its target set out. And Mike Harrington was its final.
Well,
That was
any smart predator does not just charge in. The smart predator studies its prey before it goes after it, and that even happens in the animal kingdom. I mean, sharks don't just swim up and take a bite. They will circle things before they come in close. They're looking for the best angle attack, looking for weaknesses, looking for the best, looking for which one is the weak one of the group, that kind of thing. Predators, they've got to think about their attacks because if they get wounded, there's no predator doctor. Well, the movies they take care of themselves, but I'm talking like mountain lions or grizzlies or stuff like that. If they get hurt bad enough trying to take down a prey, they're probably going to die.
Yep.
If I wasn't afraid I would get sued, I would love to write a predator versus maybe one of my characters from the Apex Predator series, like Predator versus Micah or Predator versus William Gray Eagle. I would love to write that. Probably get sued, so I probably won't.
Probably so. But that would be amazing.
It'd be a lot of fun to write too. I wonder if I could get away with writing it as long as I just gave it away for free. I might have to look into that because I think it'd just be fun to write.
Here's the thing: you can write whatever you want to. It's just whether you try to publish it or not. Right. So you could write it and just.
Well, fan fiction exists, and people don't get sued over fan fiction.
There you go. Just write it as fan fiction.
Just as long as I didn't try to sell it or make money off of it, I think I'd probably be okay.
Because I think that would be.
I might have to do that and just like put it up on my website or put it over on the Patreon. Yeah, Toombs is right. If I put it on the Patreon, I probably would get in trouble.
Yeah.
Lene says, couldn't you just make a predator-like monster? I probably could, but everybody would know what I was hinting at.
Especially now.
Especially now that I said, now that I'd like to do it. I don't know. I've got a couple of contacts that work for the company. I might be able to reach out and say, hey, this is what I was hoping to do.
Who's got Dark Horse have that now? Or
yeah, I think Dark Horse has it.
Because I know DC had it at one time because there was a lot of Batman versus Predator.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Marvel even had it once because there has been a Wolverine versus Predator teased. I don't know if they ever actually did anything.
I don't know if they ever made it.
But
there's a fan film made on YouTube of Wolverine versus Predator.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
That's pretty good.
Can you imagine though the actual comic book version of Wolverine versus a Predator?
Yeah. K. Bauer says Wild Hunt versus the Glimmer Man. Corey Cole says, did you guys know Van Damme was the original Predator? I did know that.
For a minute. He didn't last for maybe a week or so on set and he got fired.
I wonder what the whole story behind that really is.
Well, who knows?
Tim says Marvel has it back. I don't know. I'm going to have to reach out to some of my contacts.
Oh, he says there's a Wolverine versus Predator that is happening. So,
ooh, that would be badass.
Yep. Well, there's actually been Superman versus aliens in DC, where Superman
Marvel created their own version of quote unquote aliens with a race they called the Brood.
Mm-hmm. And but Superman actually got a chest burster put inside him at one point in the comic.
How he couldn't just grab it and pull it off his face?
Because he was at wherever he was at, it had a red sun, so he was weakened. So that was the whole thing. Is they were trying to get him back to a solar system with a yellow sun before the before that.
The
Because
burst out.
can you imagine what kind of alien would come out if it come out of Superman with his DNA?
It'd be unstoppable. You better be getting yourself some kryptonite bullets and fast.
Mm-hmm.
Go get to talking to the Batman because you guarantee he's got some kryptonite stashed somewhere. Ooh, Lene says the Dark Frontiers gang versus Pale Crawlers. The next Dark Frontiers book is the villain of the piece is a Wendigo. T. Davis says who's going to be Wolverine? Yeah, Hugh Jackman's getting a little long on the tooth to play Wolverine.
Well, he is playing him in
Deadpool 3. Pine Knot Yoder says, "Where's the D.A. Roberts Bigfoot movie? Now that I would watch, I would love for that to happen. Unfortunately, I don't have any contacts in the movie industry. But if any of y'all know anybody that works for Netflix or YouTube or not YouTube, Netflix or Amazon or HBO or any of those companies that are looking for acquisitions, especially since the writers strike kind of bit them in the ass, I would definitely be interested in working with a production company to put any of my books into movies or TV series." Holy crap, we're coming up on the 2-hour mark. Yeah, we got away from Frankenstein pretty early, but we'd really pretty much covered all the real world aspects of it. It's not like we had vast amounts of Frankenstein material, but we did segue into some pretty cool ass movies.
Oh yeah. And that I know we joke about that, and we do get off topic a lot, but we always usually have a good topic going on, whether it's on the original topic or not. It's not like we're just talking about nothing. It's always a good conversation.
KC Galloway says DA win where? I'm missing something. I know it must have been something in reaction to something I said, but I'm not sure what do you mean? Camo Dad 72 says DA need to get to reading. I got Dark Frontiers, but I haven't had time. Well, I'd love to hear what you think. Mark Napier says I still wish you'd write the Wendigo story I told you about, DA. I still got plans to get to it at some point. I don't know if it'll be anytime soon, but dude, you should see the notes I've got. I've got probably 60 short stories plotted out and at least that many novels. I have got so much already plotted out that I need to get written. Working in other stories is going to take time. So I've got enough already set aside that I want to get written that'll probably keep me busy for the next 10 years.
If they were privy to some of the off-camera conversations we have about all the potential stories and the way things, if you could write a book every week for the next 2 years, you wouldn't get all the stories we've talked about.
No, wouldn't even come close.
Because there's literally that many ideas of things out there. Because when you think about every series has got at least, I would say, 15 or 20 more books worth of stories, and then you still got the fantasy series that's got to tie into to what's going on. You ain't even got the first book of that one written yet or finished.
Well, it's about half done.
So and that brings in a whole new set of stories that go with everything too. So there's no lack of material. Let's just put it that way.
I have a ton. In fact, let me pull something up and I'll just share the screen. Give me just a second.
Because Wild Hunt still got to go deal with the Oborus Society.
Mm-hmm. And that's going to happen.
Yep. Project Olympus has to happen. There's a lot of stuff lots and lots of stuff that still has to happen.
Oh, definitely. Hang on. I know I've got that list somewhere. I've got to find it.
Still got to get Grey Eagle back. Still got to get the Nightmare Hunters up and running. Are you going to share what I think you're going to share?
Yeah, I've just got to find it. Oh, here we go. Okay. Let me bring this up on another screen. This one hasn't been updated in a while, but let me share my screen.
Yeah, I think you can check at least one or maybe two off what you're about to show, right?
Right. This list has not been updated in a hot minute, but there we go. This is just a list of some of the books I've got planned for the very near future. And that's not counting the short stories.
Yep, that's 40 just with what's going on right now. Because some of the short stories tie into the main.
Yeah. In fact, the one I'm working on right now, I'm finishing up Demons Part 2, which is kind of a Margolin origin story. Demons Part 1 kind of goes into why Margolin is the way he is, and Demons Part 2 is kind of bridging the gap between the last Dark Frontiers book and the next Codename Wild Hunt book.
So you decide to go Wild Hunt next?
And I've got two other projects I've got to finish before the next Wild Hunt, but Wild Hunt's going to be one of the top priorities. I'm hoping to have that done sometime this year before we see the end of the year. I'm hoping to. Can't swear that it's going to happen, but that's what I'm shooting for. Mark Napier says the Curse of Ticonderoga could have a certain long-lived Native American medicine man in it. But we know that Jay is at least old enough to have fought at the Battle of Greasy Grass, which is also known as the Battle of Little Bighorn.
Custer's Last Stand. So.
D.A. Robert, Halibal Wolf says, D.A. Roberts, why not do the Predator fan fiction and just let Cam do it as an audio book? I don't think we would be allowed to make money off of it at all. And if you put it up as an audio on YouTube, you're still going to get ad revenue. You're going to get things like that. So I think we would probably get in trouble for that. The only way I could do it at all is if I gave it away completely for free. Spiritual Odyssey said, I tried to leave her super chat and the link disappeared. Not Facebook. YouTube has been kind of acting nuts here the last week or two. We've been having a lot of issues with our chat commands not working. YouTube's having some issues, and I hope they get it straightened out. I'm going to have Noah take a look and make sure it's not my stream elements that's causing it, but I don't think it is. We're definitely going to look into see if we can figure out a way to get the issues fixed, because we've been having quite a few here the last couple of shows. Pine Not Yoder says, you better get that good chair your son has, or just borrow his so you can write more. Yeah, the one I've got kind of sucks. I thought it was going to be great when I first got it, but it was not designed for what I put it, what the amount of work I put it for. If I was, if I only used it like an hour or two a day, it wouldn't have been an issue. But I spent a lot of time in a desk chair writing books, and this one has no lumbar support, and the piston that allows you to raise and lower the height of the desk chair, that thing crapped out in about a week. So I know it's janky as hell. I've got the piston extended all the way up to where I want it, and then I took a pair of vice grips and locked them in place so the piston can't go back down. So this chair is pretty crappy. But hopefully we'll be able to order that chair soon. But right now, uh, right, I'm not. Folks, don't take it this way. Just I'm just grousing. I'm not asking for anything. I'm not don't mean anything by this. I'm just saying our finances are really freaking tight right now. So we've had a lot going on this last month. A lot more than I've talked about. But we've this last month and a half, 2 months have been really nuts for us. And right now our finances are stretched pretty damn tight. So probably not going to be ordering much of anything anytime soon. But I've been putting money back for the chair. I don't have enough put back yet. The chair is pricey, but it should be one I keep for a while because it comes with a 5-year warranty, full replacement warranty. But it's going to be damn near $700 once it's all said and done. So it's a big expense, but it's something that's going to have to hold off for a bit, I'm afraid. Oh, Spiritual Odyssey joined the channel. That is awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Mark Napier says, order a chair for a 500-pound person. They last forever. This one's rated for like 400 pounds. So that's the plan. It's super comfortable. It's got full lumbar support. It's adjustable for everything I need. It's a high-end chair, and I've been kind of making do for the last 4 years or so, just buying a cheap chair whenever I wear them out. But I'm going through like one every 8 months or 8 or 10 months. And this one that I thought would be a good one, which this one I think was like $160, $170. It wasn't, I didn't have it 2 weeks before the piston blew in it. So it wasn't that great of a chair to begin with.
Spiritual Odyssey wants us to talk about Swamp Thing since that's a great movie. The first one, anyway.
The first one was pretty good. The second one was pretty cheesy. Super chat from, thank you, man. Appreciate it. I missed that. It went by so fast I didn't even see it. Wyatt Estes gave us a super chat. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you, Wyatt. And did you ever see the series, the TV series?
I don't get to watch much TV.
Well, it was back in the 90s, so back when we were still fairly young. Actually, Dick Durek, the one that played Swamp Thing in the very first movie, he actually was in like the first 2 or 3 episodes of it. Then it went to somebody. I can't remember the guy's name, but Dick Durek was not supposed to be the main character of the first movie. He was just going to be the stunt man. But the guy who played the doctor, he was actually one of the bad guys in RoboCop. If you remember, he's the one that he walked in and grabbed him by the hair and pulled him out of the dance club.
Mm-hmm.
But he was not. I mean, obviously this suit was made for somebody more Dick Durek size, and that's
right.
What you would think of as a Swamp Thing, what he looked like.
Right.
So
good night, werewolf.
Not werewolf. So that's how Durek got the role, and then he actually played. It was just him in the second movie.
I don't even know that I've seen the second movie.
Second was the one that's got Heather Locklear in it, but it is pure cheese. I mean, it is. Whereas the first one was really dark and almost a horror movie, the second one was 100% over the top, cheesy comic book movie with the comic book transitions. Kind of like, remember the Incredible Hulk that they did with I want to say the one they did with um, what's the guy's name that played in Troy? That played Hector in Troy? Eric Bana.
Eric Bana.
Yeah, remember how they did the comic book transitions with the panel, that kind of stuff. That's the way the second Swamp Thing movie was, and it was just it was where the first one was really dark, and I mean obviously Wes Craven directed the first one, so and he had just come from directing Last House on the Left with and the guy that played one of the bad guys in that movie, David Hess. He's the main bad guy, or not the main bad guy, but he's the main henchman for Dr. Arcane in that movie. And then you go to the second one, and it's more a comedy, tongue in cheek, knows it's a goofy movie from the start. So, not really missing
Spiritual
nothing.
Odyssey says, how about the Fly remakes with Jeff Goldblum?
Those are actually remakes that I think are probably as good, if not better, because that was
especially the added special effects. Other than just having a dude with a big fly head, it really when the crap started coming out of his skin and the Jeff Goldblum fly was really really good. I like that. I thought it was really well done.
But Jeff Goldblum, especially during that time, he was a real. I mean, now he's kind of over the top and but then he was a really good actor.
I still think he's a pretty good actor. He just, I don't know, he just kind of phones it in anymore. He just kind of plays the same thing in literally everything. He became Ian Malcolm from the Jurassic Park movies, and that's just kind of where he stuck.
Yeah.
Holy crap, we are after the 2-hour mark. Yep. Should we have a little message from old Doc?
Let's hear it, a little fella.
All right. Let's hear something from Doc, shall we? Here we go. If I can find.
Hey everybody, this is Kerry Pocket Doc Davis from Dark Angel Medical, and you are listening to DA Ex Machina with DA Roberts. You may recognize me or some of my products from Dark Angel Medical in some of the Apex Predator, Lakeview Man, and Wild Hunt books, and you can get those products at www.darkangelmedical.com, along with training classes on how to use those products and save a life. Shoot us an email at info@darkangelmedical.com and be the difference.
And let me drag that down off our faces. And remember, if you purchase anything at Dark Angel Medical, use discount code cryptid25 for 25% off your order. And they do have classes to teach you how to use these products. And those classes are HSA and FSA certified. So if you first responders out there, you can get credits for you can get credits for taking these classes, as well as use some of your training money to get these classes paid for. But check out everything over at Dark Angel Medical. They've got some of the best products out there. I carried one the whole time I was a cop. Just fantastic kits, and I can't recommend them enough. And while we're mentioning them, remember to keep Doc in your prayers. He's got some family issues going on, and our hearts are out with him. Robbie, you want to tell us a little bit about Scalawag Tactical?
Yep. Scalawag Tactical, another one of our affiliate companies, make really good fixed blades, folders, fillet knives, kitchen knives. I mean, just really any type of cutlery that you could want. Craig and his guys make a lot of really good. I say it all the time. I feel like a broken record sometimes, but it's worth repeating. You can't go out and buy anything that's going to be for the money any better than this. You're going to go pay $200, $300, sometimes $400 and $500 for some of these Spydercos and Benchmades and all these big top name brand knives, and you're only going to be at another sales number to them. Something happens to that knife, they could, they might have a lifetime guarantee, and they might, once you send it off and pay shipping and handling, they'll send you another knife, no big deal, because they don't care. But Craig is going to make sure that you're happy with the knife you got, and if something's wrong with it, he's going to take care of it. Not because you're a number, because you're a customer that he cares about. You know,
Very
Steve's
much
told
so.
that story plenty of times about how, and Greg didn't have to do what he did, but he made a customer for life with Steve just because of the way he handled that situation. And, you know, that's what, you know, former military, veteran, that's the kind of people we want to, you know, support on this channel. DA puts Scallywag Tactical in his books for a reason, because we use them. I use this knife every single day, and it's just as sharp as it was the day I got it. That kind of craftsmanship, when you put that kind of craftsmanship into something, it shows and it means something, and that's what we like to support. So going over to Scallywag Tactical, check out the blemish blades, get you a good blemish blade. There's nothing wrong with the blade. It's just usually the box. Sometimes you may have a small scratch on the blade, but nothing is wrong with the blade. You're gonna get yourself a good deal. But even if not, you want to get you something else. At the checkout, put code DA Roberts 10 in and get yourself 10% off there anyway. So just if you want a good knife that's gonna last you and you're gonna be able to depend on, you can't go wrong with Scallywag Tactical.
I totally agree. And our other affiliate is Ken Brock over at Brock Blades. I didn't see Ken tonight, did you?
No, he wasn't. I didn't see him in the chat, and he didn't. Usually he'll text me and let me know if he's going to be in or not, but I guess he was busy today.
Ken Brock is a career first responder, career cop, and he makes custom knives. They're unique, one of a kind. You no two are identical. Scallywag makes fantastic blades, but again, they are mass produced. So you put two gunner's mates next to each other, you're not going to be able to tell them apart. But every blade that Ken Brock makes is a work of art, but it's a functional work of art. These things are awesome. They hold an edge like nothing else. And again, I've shown this one many times. I'm going to get more of his blades, but unfortunately, I'm going to have to wait for a bit. But anyway, Ken, again, he makes unique blades. You can, when you choose a custom, you can choose blade size, the size you want, the style you want, the handle, the color. There's a lot of factors you can choose and customize your own blade. And they make an awesome gift for any outdoorsman or first responder or veteran in your life. That the gift of a custom blade is something that'll be cherished for a lifetime. So if you go over to brockblades.com, you can select from some of the blades that are already created, or you can specify you want a custom build. And if you in the custom build instructions, if you mention that you heard about Brock Blades from this show, he will give you 10% off. Or when you're purchasing a blade on the website, if you use discount code cryptid10, you'll get 10% off your entire order. So definitely check those guys out. Show them some love. We always support our first responders, our veterans here. We're very happy to do so, and it's something that we're always going to continue to do. We're very proud of our late men and women in uniform that keep us safe and keep us free. Another thing that's near and dear to us is the 22 a day foundation. 22 a day, we lose 22 veterans a day to suicide. We also lose a considerable number of first responders. If you look at the Officer Down Memorial page, you'll see some pretty chilling numbers of how many first responders we're losing, not just in the line of duty deaths, but to suicide as well. So keep those folks in your thoughts and prayers. You never know when the text you send somebody might be what keeps them off the edge that day. It's because they see and do things that haunt them. And just keep those folks in your thoughts and prayers, and let them know you're thinking about them. And even something small to you might mean the world to them. Let's get 22 a day down to 0. And I won't go on my usual lengthy spiel about that tonight. But there is a couple of folks I'd like to ask y'all if you guys are the praying type to pray for. Pat Canada, who's a longtime member and supporter of the channel. She's going to have some back surgery, and her health is not the greatest. So we're praying for her to recover. Chandler Hall, who's a member of the channel, who's a member of the DAX Machina family. His father is having some pretty serious health issues. Unfortunately, he said his health is declining. So I told him that we would be praying for his dad. His dad's name's Larry Hall. So keep Larry in your thoughts and prayers as well. Um, but folks, we're so proud that you guys are with us. We're so happy you guys chose to spend your evening with us, and we don't take that for granted. We hope to earn those subscriptions and earn those likes. And if you think we did a good job tonight, please hit that like, share, and subscribe because it helps us with the algorithm, helps the channel continue to grow. And tell folks that that enjoy this kind of content. Tell them to come check us out because we would love a chance to get them to be part of the DAX Machination. Uh, we're damn proud to have each and every one of you, and we hope to continue to grow the channel and be able to do a lot more. And again, it's only been possible because you guys have been with us every step of the way. So thank each and every one of you guys. You guys are the best, and we're very thankful for you guys for being with us. Robbie, tell us a little bit about Lone Wolf Customs and what if it's true. I'm sorry. So what if it's true? What's really out there? Why do I always do that?
Yeah, it is what it is.
Sorry.
One of them things. Lone Wolf Customs. A lot of y'all were actually some Miss Lenae's or made some orders. Karen Paulson, David By. A few of y'all have already made orders and got stuff. Toombs just put it up in the chat. We do custom woodworking, laser engraving, that kind of stuff. So any of the wild hunt stuff, I think we can do the Man's Marauders, Dark Frontiers. We do the Dark Angel Medical. We've got pretty much all the stuff, the artwork for most all of DA. Yep, DA just got his whiskey flask. We can do the 8-ounce and the 12-ounce. I think was the other one. DA.
I think so. Yeah, the coffee mugs are in the dishwasher. Yeah. I don't have them in here to show.
Thermal, and also we can do glass etching. DA, you want to show the other side of yours?
If I can get it out of the light.
Yep. See, we did this for all of us. One side's got the DAX Machina logo. Let me see if I can do it on the other one. So there. And then that's the DAX Machination thing. So we can do glass etching. Just,
John Kern says, if you thought of doing license plates, Robbie could do it.
Yeah, we can do those too. So just Toombs has put it up a couple times. That's my email address at rrainc8@gmail.com. That link will take you to the very first website we had off that Wix. It's not set up to where you can order anything off of that website. So if you want something, and there's none of the laser engraving stuff on there. That's all the first woodworking stuff that we were doing. So if you want something, just send me an email and say, hey, can you do this? Or get one of those, and we'll get with it and figure something out and get it out to you. And we're trying to make things bigger and better, but for right now, it's this is how it's going to work. But
it's in its infancy. We're still getting her off the ground.
Yeah,
but it's going to happen.
Yep, and it's right now it is encompassing pretty much DAX Machina and what's really out there and Dark Angel, but there's probably going to be some other channels that come in eventually, and you can get merchandise from other channels off of it too. That's our goal anyway. It's what DA Doc and I have kind of been talking about and trying to get off the ground. But obviously with what we can control first, we want to get it off the ground with our brands first. And the other stuff will come later. So, and as far as what's really out there, still in the holding pattern. We got to get a place, and then once we get a place, we've got to get some more equipment because a certain person that left took his equipment too. So we're kind of behind the 8 ball as far as we can still do a few things, but we still have to get some equipment, and that stuff's not cheap. And that's why if you want some merchandise, it'll help going towards that. Because right now we don't have a place or anything. We could, even if we could come over here to the house and do it, we don't have all the stuff we need to get everything done. So just bear with us. We're working on it. But if you want to help out, order some products, and that'll help us get get to that. We'll be able to do what we need to do for the big 4-part series that we got. It's just having a place set up to do it consistently is what we're working on right now. So that's where we're at.
The link just popped up talking about the merch shop. I want to say a quick word about the merch shop. Been having some issues with Teespring, taking forever to get orders out. So Noah and I are going to be redoing the merch shop probably in the next month or so. We're going to be moving it over to Stream Elements. So if you're wanting any of the shirts that are currently available or any of the hoodies or anything that are currently available from Teespring, you might want to strike now because when that site comes down, there's going to be all new merch. We might use similar designs to some of what's up, but the designs that are up there now are probably going to go away. We'll be putting in, we're changing the store completely. We'll be moving it over to Stream Elements, and they have better quality shirts, I think, than Teespring, but they're also faster about getting the stuff turned around. So the prices you see now may be subject to change because depending on what Stream Elements charges versus what Teespring charges, the price may adjust up or down. We're also going to redesign most of the designs. So look for some big changes coming in the merch store. So if you're wanting a t-shirt or anything that's currently available, might want to grab it now because it's probably going to change. And like I said, in the next month or so.
And Roxanne, were you asking if I can put that on something, or are you asking if DA can do that on t-shirts?
What's that?
Roxanne Delgado said, "Can you put Apex Predator with a dogman on things?" I don't know if she was asking you about t-shirts or me about laser engraving. Because
I could probably send you some of the promo art.
Yeah, I mean,
the Apex. Yeah, you could probably. I've got werewolf images.
Yeah,
I can send you a werewolf image and the Apex Predator logo.
Yeah, if you got the logo,
you can put that on anything.
Yeah, I put that on that sign that I had at the last show that I went to. Remember, I put the Apex Predator, Wild Hunt, and the Dark Frontiers. Yes, Roxanne, I can. If I've got a picture of it, I can just about put it on just about anything.
Oh yeah.
If you want something, Roxanne, hit me up and send me an email. Tell me what you're wanting, and we'll make it happen somehow or another. I mean, within reason. I can't put. I don't have a laser right now powerful enough to like do anything other than like for metal anyway. Much more than like aluminum or stainless steel for the tumblers and stuff like that. But pretty much wood, aluminum, stainless steel, leather, any of those kind of mediums, acrylic. We'll show the sign, DA, the little desk LED sign.
Let me see if I can lift it up while it's still lit up without having to just hold up the acrylic. There you go.
Yep.
That's on my desk. Notice if we can get some round pieces of thick leather and do DAX Machina coasters.
Yep, we can do those because just getting pieces of leather like that, I can engrave on those. So
that would be freaking awesome.
I could put that, or I actually put anything, but that would look really good on some coasters. And like you said, the DAX that on some coasters. Yeah, we could do that. Actually, we can do slate too. I can actually do the slate coasters.
Oh, that'd be pretty badass too. I'd like to have some of those, not only for my office, but for my living room.
Yep. So, like I said, folks, if you got an idea for something you want, either shoot me or DA, either one, an email, and send us an idea. If we can do it, we'll do it. If we can't, I mean, never know if you don't ask us. But if we can do it, we'll do it.
Absolutely. Well, folks, we are coming up on the 2.5 hour mark. Hope we were informative and entertaining. Hope you learned a little bit about the Frankenstein myth. There's more to it than just a novel by Mary Shelley. And there are a couple of documentaries out there on it. I think are worth watching. I think the History Channel did one. But just, those are definitely worth Googling and looking for. But thank you guys for hanging out with us. Thank you for spending your evening with us. We had a great time, and we enjoy talking about creepy subjects like this. And I hope you'll join us again Saturday night when we'll be discussing vampires. We'll be discussing the history, the myths, and the fiction behind vampires. And we'll probably at some point get sidetracked onto vampire movies.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of inevitable. That's probably going to happen. But thank you guys for being with us. We really had a great time. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Again, if you think we've earned it, hit that like, share, and subscribe. Join the channel. We'd love to have you as a member of the channel. That does help out quite a bit. And let people know that that enjoy this kind of content, and send them our direction, because we'd love to have them here as part of the DAX Machination. Big shout out and thank you to the mods. You guys did an awesome job. You guys always do, but I've got the best mods. My mods are awesome. You guys do such a great job, and thank you guys for all your hard work and everything you do. Prayers again for Doc, buddy. If you catch the show, we love you, and our thoughts are with you and your family. Steve, sorry you had to work tonight, brother. Hopefully we'll have you with us on Saturday night. I need to come by and see you, because I've got a glass just like this one to give to you. So need to bring that to you, so you've got one to lift with us. And again, thank you guys so much for making this possible. We're just three, four hillbillies talking about monsters and cryptids and everything creepy under the sun. We have a great time doing it, and you guys really make us feel welcome, and how much you guys are a part of our lives now, because we really enjoy doing this show and hanging out with y'all. And it's just like a bunch of friends having a conversation, and that's all we really want it to be. We've been ending this show on a toast, and one of my favorite songs is an old Irish song called "The Parting Glass." And the lyrics basically are talking about somebody lifting a glass to his friends at the end of the night when he's going home. But if you really read the lyrics, you understand that it's talking about more than that. It's talking about lifting a glass for those who can no longer lift that glass. It's about saying goodbye to the ones that have gone before. And this has been a rough year for a lot of folks. Doc's had a rough year. I've had a rough couple of weeks. Robbie's had his share. Robbie just lost his cousin. And, y'all keep Robbie in your prayers as well. And Robbie, like I said, man, you need me for anything, you give me a call. I'm always right here if you need me.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
And again, thank you guys for all your kind words, guys, for being with us, and thank you for being part of the family here. But the quote goes like this, and I'll post it up. "But since it fell unto my lot that I should rise and you should not, I'll gently rise and softly call. Good night and joy be to you all." Good night, everybody.
Thank you for joining us. Catch us again Wednesdays and Saturdays on DAX Machina. A special thanks to all our channel members and Patreon supporters. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe.